On this episode of Junkyard Gold, we're in rural Pennsylvania checking out another awesome stash of vintage metal. I'm Steve Mignonti, hot rod historian, author, and lover of all things cars. I travel all across the country to uncover the forgotten and hidden gems from the automotive world. Where others see piles of rusted scrap metal, I see the cars for what they really are, junkyard gold. On this episode of Junkyard Gold, we're in rural Pennsylvania at a yard with about 600 cars. Now, this place was in business for about 50 years and open to the public, but they closed 5 years ago. But we have special access and we're free to roam. And beyond that, I hear there's a petty blue 4-speed Mopar somewhere in here. We're gonna find it. As I started to look around, I ran into Bernie, a longtime veteran of this yard. His thing is retro rat rods, although he used to restore cars. Looks like he grew up. So Bernie, this yard's been closed to the public for a while. How did you get in?
Well, I've been coming here so many years that Bob kind of almost adopted me. So, you know, when you look at these cars, and if you take the time to look in them, there's a lot of good parts in them.
What are your favorite cars? What do you work on?
Well, you know, I always done shiny cars. Now I'm doing traditional old hot rods, solid axle, Fords, Chevy, old school. You know, I'm old school.
Now, I heard you found a rare Chrysler convertible in here. Tell me about that.
Years ago. It was a Chrysler 300 convertible.
Dual quads, Chrysler's first muscle car.
Well, it didn't have the motor. It had the top and the seats were in it, and it was a body with the rear end and the front end and everything else.
Well, good save. You know, a lot of these cars, I mean, it takes somebody to either crush them or save them.
I always felt like I said to you before, I come here, I look at these cars, it's like going through an old car nursing home.
Right.
You know, I'm looking at the old patients because they've been here so many years, and I've been coming here so many years, and I don't know how much longer it's gonna be here. Probably when the price of scrap goes up, another era gone by. You're lucky to be here. Could be a foot of snow here.
It won't be long. Thanks, Bernie.
Okay.
Bernie was on a mission to find Oldsmobile J2 carburetors, so I let him be on his way and started to dig around to see what gold I could find. Well, we're not in Hollywood. This is Pennsylvania, a working man's state, a blue-collar state. And the cars we find in this yard really reflect that. A lot of base vehicles, 2 barrels, single exhaust, and work trucks. And this is a great example. This is a Jeep FC forward control. Now, we all think about Jeeps, CJs, Wagoneers. Well, the FC was new for 1957, and they made these through 1966. FC stands for forward control. By putting the driver atop the front axle, well, you got much better maneuverability in the city or when you're plowing snow or whatever you might be doing. Now, these were available in 3 series, the FC 150, a little 3/4 tonner, the FC 170, and the FC 170 heavy duty. This is that. This is the biggest, meanest forward control Jeep they made. It's got the big floating axles front and rear, Dana 70 in the back, all-wheel drive, and this is the FC on steroids. Now, a lot of folks think that this cab tilts like a Kenworth or a Peterbilt. It doesn't. It's bolted down. If you want access to the engine, you gotta go inside. Well, let's take a peek, see what we have. Oh yeah, there it is. This is the Flathead 6. 226 cubic inches, 120 horsepower, but at least this isn't the FC 150, which is the 3/4 ton smaller version. That would have the Hurricane 4-cylinder with maybe 70 horsepower. So this is the big dog right here. Now keep in mind, all of these FCs were built with inline 4 or 6-cylinder power, no V8s. In fact, AMC would buy Kaiser in the early 70s, and then of course the 304, 360, 401 would have been used in certain Jeep vehicles. But back in the days of the FC, strictly inline flathead power. Everything was manual, no automatic transmissions, no power steering, 4-speed non-synchro transmission, and of course the steering was also powered by arms. I can only imagine driving down the highway in this thing or plowing snow, looking out through what used to be the windshield at snow flying down and sitting inside this cozy cab doing your work in rural Pennsylvania. But I think this Jeep's working days are behind it. The enclosed steel cab is only part of the picture. The FC was available with a variety of factory-installed beds, including a dump body, a tow truck, a cement mixer, and the stake bed that we see right here, which is rotting away into the ground. Now, all FCs were built with a Dana-style rear axle, and they all look the same, right? Not so much. There's actually a variety of them, and we can tell which one it is by looking at the face of the axle. I'll show you. Now, the Dana rear axle is what we call a Salisbury type with a removable inspection cover, and they all kind of look the same. Now, some are much larger physically than others. Now, how do you know which one you have? After all, they made them in 27, 33, 35, 44, 45 on up. Well, you look right here. There's a number cast in just about the 4 o'clock position. You see that number right there. That's the Dana 70 series. This is the biggest one. In fact, this is even bigger than the Dana 60 that Chrysler put under Hemi 4-speed cars back in the 60s. It's a tough axle. But you'll also see 44, 45, 53. But again, to find out which Dana you have, just look right there. If this forward control Jeep were mine, I think it would have to get restored. It's that rare, that special. Now, the only downside is it does have a lot of rust. I mean, we're in Pennsylvania after all. Now, the rust I'm worried about is not so much the cab. The aftermarket does make reproduction patch panels for these, which it's not an issue. The frame is the problem here. There's a lot of surface pitting from front to back, and if you do a restoration, the frame has to be nice and smooth and black and shiny, and in order to make that happen here, we'd have to skim the entire frame with putty to get that done. Now, it is a rare enough piece, it has to be done. Or, maybe we just throw this thing over to Freiberger, he'd throw a plate on it, fix the brakes, maybe drive it around LA and get it done. Here's a Junkyard Gold riddle. What's made of fiberglass, has 2 seats, pop-up headlights, and a 4-speed transmission? Got to be a Corvette, right? Not so fast. Behold, the Saab Sonnet 3. Like most other Saabs of the time, it's front-wheel drive and is powered by a V4 engine. Now, this engine's tiny. This is actually something that was designed by Ford in 1961. In fact, the first Mustang show car, the Mustang 1, which was a mid-engine car, used this engine. It's called the Taunus 4-cylinder engine. It was initially designed for, potentially, a Falcon-sized American subcompact. It never happened here, but these engines were big in Europe, even using these in Mercury Capris. Now, this very same engine grew into the Cologne 2.8-liter V6 engine, but here we see it in this Saab Sonnet. The Saab Sonnet 3 was built between 1970 and 74, and just over 8,300 of these were produced. Now, it may not be as fast as a Corvette, but with this fiberglass body, this will be around for an awful long time. It's a big part of the marketplace for garage ephemera. This is an old school snap-on computer wheel balancer. I don't think there's any microchips in this thing, but it's all metal. These things can be worth $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on the auction circuit. I like how the wheel goes on the side here. And speaking of wheels, great little shot of an MG wire wheel, not chrome. These things are always painted. Right next to an old Tornado front-wheel drive wheel. Check out all that offset. Could any 2 wheels be any different? Hubcap City, love this. Full wheel covers, as they say. These are not hubcaps. Technically, a hubcap's a smaller one. These are wheel covers. I love this. They're all sorted. Pontiac, Buick, Pontiac, old-time Pontiac. Very cool. Catalina, 1964. Where's the Mopar stuff? Buick. Funny thing is, Buick did a great job of faking their super stock wheel with this snap-on hubcap. Works for me. All right, whenever I see a Ford Fairlane with a stripe down here, it says one thing, GT. Now that's Ford's muscle car version of the Fairlane. resized in 1966 to accept the big block. Let's take a peek under the hood and see which engine we find here. Now, it could be the 289. That's the standard engine in a Ford Fairlane GT. But here, yes, here it is, man. This is a big block Ford. This is the FE. And Ford redesigned the Fairlane in 1966 to have a wider space between the spring towers to get that big wedge engine in under the hood. Now, there were two engines possible in the 390, the Y-code two-barrel, yep, a two-barrel 390 in a GT, you could have it, and that made 270 horsepower, or the S-code. Now, this one here, the intake manifold is missing, but we can still learn what engine it has by going to the VIN. Okay. It's stamped in here on the radiator support, and I do see here an S in the 5th spot. This is the 320 horsepower, 4-barrel, dual exhaust 390. Now, there was a 427, which would have an R code, and that's the big dog, 425 horsepower. A handful were built. We're not going to find one in the junkyard, or are we? Anyway, this is an S code 390, but with that said, I do see the removable rocker arms. Of course, these are part of all FE motors. And what you want to always look for is the adjustable component here above the push rod. We don't see it here, but if a guy had some 427 rocker arms, you'd see a nut and a screwdriver slot right there for adjustables. And sometimes a guy would put the 427 rockers on his 390 with a solid cam. We don't have them here, but it always pays to take a look at the rockers on any 390 just to make sure. Let's look inside. Now, the Fairlane GT could be had with a 4-speed manual transmission or the GTA with the big C6 automatic. Now, in this one, we see the column shift. That's right, this car was born with a bench, no console. A little sportier would be to have the buckets in a center-mounted console. But again, this was connected to the heavy-duty C6, one of the best automatics of the muscle car era. Speaking of the muscle car era, Ford kind of started off slow. In the early 60s, they often made their muscle cars out of big full-size cars, like the Galaxy, big cars with 390s and 427s. But for 1966 and 7, when they finally used their intermediate-sized Fairlane and coupled it with the 390 big block, they finally got the muscle car recipe down pat. This is a great car. It's kind of a shock to see it here in the junkyard. If I had this Fairlane GTA, I think I would restore it back to square one. I mean, it already has power front disc brakes, that's standard. Big 9-inch rear axle, also standard on the GTA. And to be honest with you, I think customizing or modifying this car would not do it any favors. I'd bring it right back to showroom stock. Junkyard Gold takes many forms. A good example is this. This is an auxiliary bumper. If you lived in the city, you would buy this bolted to your existing front or rear bumper and give your car an extra level of protection. These things were very popular with folks who lived in big cities like New York, which is not that far from here. We're in Pennsylvania right now. Now, this one here is kind of cool. It actually has the markings on the bottom still for a Chevrolet application right there. Now, these were sold by companies like J.C. Whitney, and these were made for every type of car that was popular back in the 50s. Another cool thing I just found is this. This is the wheel from a 1973 up Chevy Monte Carlo. Now, this may look like an exotic lightweight aluminum casting, and that's what John DeLorean had in mind, but the reality is this is a rubberized plastic that's been bonded to a regular steel rim to give the look of an aluminum wheel without the expense. GM actually patented this. These were called polycast wheels. And GM also used this basic technique a few years later on certain Pontiac Trans Ams with the snowflake wheels. It's all Junkyard Gold. Well, this is something pretty cool. It's a 1958 Ford Courier sedan delivery. Now, 1958 was the second year for this body style, and what I really like about these is the forward hinging hood, kind of like a Thunderbird. And of course, 1958 was the first year for quad headlamps. 57 had two. Under the hood, you could potentially get the first year 352 big block. The FE engine was, again, new for 58. But you wouldn't find one in a Courier like this. This would have had the inline 6, an overhead valve engine, but again, 3-speed manual, very austere. Let's go further. I love this, man. This is basically a sedan delivery. We can see here, that's not painted glass. That's actually a metal panel. And while this is based on the same 116-inch wheelbase as the Ranchero and the Ford Ranch Wagon 2-door glass wagon, again, this is a steel panel. These were very popular with kennels and flower shops and bakeries, and this is a very rare body style. This is one of about 3,352 of these were built in 1958, so it's a very rare bird. Inside, we can see a very austere interior, and I love how the original linoleum cardboard type upholstery on the sides is still there. Ford really made you suffer. If you went for the bottom of the barrel car like this, you got the bare minimum of interior trim, but that is the factory installed cardboard. Hard to imagine it's lasted all these years, but that's it. Even bigger news, that seat right there. Now these ordinarily had one seat for the driver. You could buy the buddy seat, but those are actually the same seats used in the 1963.5 Galaxy Lightweight 427. If you need that seat right there, you're gonna pay as much as $1,000 for a raunchy core. Now at the back of this car, we see something that's not here, and that would be the Ford 9-inch rear axle. A 1957, first year for the 9-inch, so in its second year here, well, it's gone because a lot of people like these 9-inch axles. They're narrow and they happen to fit under a Mustang really easily. They're not so wide, so they pop them in. So this one's been torched out of here. Here at the business end, I'm kind of digging on the remains of the original cardboard paneling on the inside. And again, if you had to replicate this, it's a great thing to take pictures of an original like this to see how it was really done. Now, the thing about the Courier name is that it first appeared in 1952 and was used through 61 on full-size Fords like this. Of course, in 62, Ford went to the Falcon, the compact Falcon. They actually built some two-door Falcons with steel panels and called them Couriers as well. 70s, remember the Mazda-based Courier pickup truck, which was also called the Courier. Well, if this Courier sedan delivery with my car, I think I'd probably first start with a 55-gallon drum of tetanus serum, a syringe the size of a pogo stick, and then get busy on restoring it. But I don't think I'd go factory stock. These were pretty slow and frankly, probably not a lot of fun to drive. After all, they were work vehicles, you were on the clock, and that's never much fun. Instead, I think I'd get myself a Coyote 5-liter crate engine, a 6-speed Tremec manual transmission, and put the rear suspension from modern independent rear suspension Mustang underneath it. I'd make it look stock otherwise and really fool people. Well, here's something that's really standing out because it's not rusted. This is the aluminum intake manifold seen on 1960 only slant 6 engines. Now, Chrysler made 15 million slant 6 engines in its production run, but only 1960 engines had the aluminum intake manifold. To save a few pennies per engine, they went to iron for 1961 right on into the 1970s. They came back to aluminum in 79, 78, but again, this is a rare, rare piece. Pretty cool. Well, this is pretty weird. This is a 1950 through 53 Nash Rambler. I like to call it a bumper car or a bathtub. That's because the stylists didn't have wheel openings. Instead, they thought it looked more streamlined if they got rid of the wheel openings and simply tucked the wheels in underneath. But the problem is, if you have to steer or change a flat tire, what do? So what they did is the rims and the wheels are tucked in about 6 inches inboard. They look weird to me. However, this is a 2-door wagon body style, not particularly rare. They made about 25,000 of these per year for 3 or 4 years in the 50s. But a lot of guys will take these, put a V8, customize it, and do a great job. Good raw material if you're up to it. Well, it's petty blue. It's a Mopar, but what's up with this gold roof on the top? Satellite Sebring. Now this has been added on, it's just sitting here loose. I'm guessing a tree probably fell on this car and this is a temporary fix. Inside, good stuff. We see a floor shift. Not a lot of 73-ish Mopars came with a 4-speed or manual transmission on the floor. We go to the VIN to see what this car was born as. This might be something special. This will tell us if this is Grandma's Satellite or a Roadrunner muscle car. We want to see RM in the first 2 spots of the VIN. We got it, RM, Roadrunner, no doubt about it. 5th digit will tell us which engine it was born with. Now, 1973 saw the 318 2-barrel added to the Roadrunner's base engine list. Yeah, 318 in a Roadrunner, they did it. Or the 340, or the 400 big block, or the big dog, the 440. Which one do we have? H. Okay, 344 barrel, not a bad engine. 240 horsepower for 1973, a peppy engine, and combined with a manual transmission, fun car. Now, I do like that I see the Basin Street Blue, also known as Petty Blue or Corporate Blue. Of course, Richard Petty was Plymouth's factory driver from 1960s right into the early 70s, who was the winningest NASCAR driver for years. And it's a very rare thing to see a factory-painted Petty Blue Plymouth. This is one of them. Now, we're going to learn about that manual transmission by going inside and having a closer look at the shift hump. Yeah, this add-on shift hump is a real telltale. This had a 4-speed right from the factory. Keep in mind that 1973, the 4-speed was a $201 option, D21. This would have had a pistol grip 4-speed poking up through the floor. And the 340 is a great high-winding small block, just the right thing to have a 4-speed behind it. This car was also a bench seat car. It lacks the bracketry that you would find up here for a console. So this was kind of a plain Jane stripped down Roadrunner. Now 1973 was a big year for Roadrunner. Sales tripled versus 1972. And about 17,000 of these cars were built. One of the things that helped to bring buyers into the showrooms was decontenting the Roadrunner. Like I say, the 318 was added to the standard engine list, which helped to bring the price down below $3,000, a price point that hadn't been there since 1968 when the Roadrunner debuted. Another change that came for 1973 was the ISO mounts. Now, the K-frame on Mopars supports the engine, steering, and front suspension. It bolts to the body, and that's that. Well, the ISO mount is basically a rubber bushing that goes between the K-frame and the body. It's kind of like mounting the K-frame and the engine to the car with 4 water balloons. It resisted sound, it was a little more quiet, but it made for a more mushy ride. So what would I do if this is my Roadrunner? Well, I do love factory stock Mopars, and this would be a stunner in petty blue, all done showroom stock. But since the top's already detached, we could do a what-if 73 Roadrunner convertible. Why not? Well, that's our show from Northeast Pennsylvania. They may call this coal country, I call it gold country. We found a 67 Fairlane GTA 390, a 4-wheel drive Jeep FC forward control, a 58 Ford sedan delivery, and we solved the mystery of that 4-speed petty blue Mopar. Well, there's going to be a lot more Junkyard Gold coming up on the next episode. Be there. Riviera, baby. Cool.